This meeting is being recorded and is made available to the public on request. You can get it on YouTube, I think we'll follow right now, but the other system does not have a voicemail on it right now, a voice on it. So if you need a copy of the transcript, you can pick one up in the administration building here at CTC. And I'd like to say one shout out for Mr. Armstrong. There he is, welcome to back.
I ain't back there.
The west entrance looks beautiful, sir. Thank you so very much for getting that put up. Now is an opportunity for members of the public to suggest additional topics for discussion or to address topics of interest with a presentation limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone present like to speak to the board? Seeing none, then we'll move to the Chancellor's update. Mr. Benoist.
I have one item. Fire science initiative with the city of Killeen, I think about a month ago or maybe 2 months ago. Does this work? Is it on, Fred? Can you hear me?
Pull it closer.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. About 2 months ago, Tammy Samaruba came and gave you a presentation on our initiative to take over that fire training at Killeen from the city of Killeen. And we've been working with them diligently. The short story is that it's very expensive and it's so costly that they can't afford it and we can't figure out how we can afford it. So what we've done is they're going to continue with their program as it was. We really can't take it on. And looking at the parameters for that program, one of the things we were interested in was the fact that KISD would continue to send a group of students through that program, and they told us that that's not going to happen in the future because they can't afford it either. You're talking $45,000 a student. So we have scuttled that idea. We're going to move on to something different. But in the meantime, I wanted you to know where that was, so we don't want to spend any more time and effort on that project. If you have any questions, Dr. Edie's here and Ted is here, and they both worked that diligently. Ted worked really hard on that program with Ms. Sandberg and Dr. Edie. So, no questions? It was a good try. We gave it the old college try. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a purchase of robotics lab equipment. Mrs. Prescott.
Good afternoon. Get my eyes on. The robotics program received Perkins grant funds to purchase FANUC and Amatrol robotic lab equipment necessary for students to gain experience in hands-on experience in testing, programming, operating, maintenance, and repairing robotic systems that are widely used in industry. Since the items we want to procure from Tech Labs Incorporated are included in their contract with Choice Partners Cooperative, with whom CTC is member of, the acquisition does not need further competition. However, since the total purchase amount will exceed $50,000, the purchase requires board approval prior to moving forward with the acquisition. The total purchase price is $145,440 and includes equipment, installation, training, and a 1-year warranty. So I'm here to request permission to purchase.
Any questions of Mrs. Prescott? Thank you very much.
Did you all have the copy of the?
Yeah, it's included in the read ahead.
Okay. No questions?
Okay, it'll be on the board agenda for next Tuesday's meeting for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the Title IX report. Mr. Hickman.
All right. Good afternoon, Chancellor and members of the board. As you know, after every semester, we're required to present to you the numbers of Title IX violations or cases that we had in the last semester. And as you see up on the screen, there's nothing up there because in the last reporting period of September 1st through December 31st, we had no Title IX cases whatsoever. So that's a very good thing.
That's a good thing, in case you're wondering.
Absolutely. Very good thing. So,
Amazing what happens when you shut everything down.
Absolutely, absolutely. So are there any questions?
Thank you, sir.
That's all.
Next item is the free speech, peaceful assembly, and expressive activity policy. Dr. Clark.
Good afternoon. Safety policy number 185, free speech, peaceful assembly, and expressive activities in direct response to Senate Bill 18, freedom of expression on college campuses, which was passed during the 86th legislative session. The bill requires colleges to develop a student expression policy that addresses, number one, expression in common outdoor areas. Number two, it allows student organizations and faculty to invite speakers on campus. It must include the discipline of students, student organizations, and faculty who unduly interfere with anyone's expressive activity on campus. And then number four, it must include a grievance procedure for addressing complaints of a violation of this policy. What we did was we basically incorporated all requirements of Senate Bill 18 into this policy. So there's nothing new and different. We followed the law basically. The timeline for this policy includes an adoption date of August 1 with an implementation report due to the governor's office and legislature by December 1. So in the interest of full disclosure, you may be wondering, then why are we here in January? Well, what happened, we drafted the policy within the required time frame. However, we overlooked the requirement to bring it before the board for approval. And for that, I'm so embarrassed, but I do apologize. So when we were notified of that the report was due, we could not post that implementation report or send it to the governor because we had in fact not received your approval of the policy. We drafted the policy, worked on it, but we overlooked that, and for that I do apologize. And so at this time, we're asking for your consideration in approving the policy next week. And once again, it is written in accordance with the requirements of Senate Bill 18.
Any questions, Mr. Clark, Dr. Clark? I just got one comment. I read the whole thing through, and I didn't see any provisions in there for the National Guard to come and surround the building when we have meetings.
Thank you, sir.
That's
Thank you,
probably
Dr.
because
Clark.
they hadn't thought of it.
We'll put that in.
It could be that we're a very cordial campus and respects everybody's rights, which it should be, right?
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Next item on our agenda is the facility master plan update. Mr. Chapman. Mr. Chapman, looks like.
No, Jeff Chapman is the principal with PBK. He had a meeting and was hurrying up here as quickly as he could. I'm sure the weather has caused a little bit of delay. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and start with the presentation. If he gets here, he can jump in. Otherwise, we will move forward with that. I don't want to put this off for another month. So let me go ahead and do the handouts. There were a couple slides that we just finalized late. Have they already been distributed? Okay. So as you may recall, this has been in process for probably a little over a year. The project initiated with us reviewing the overall goals. We created a visioning committee, reviewed a number of assessments. These were campus assessment surveys from students. We have other various assessments, a facility condition assessment. We've got other tools that we use to assess the existing conditions of the campus. All that was basically brought together to come up with some recommendations that were reviewed by the committee as well as the chancellor and the deputy chancellors. And so this will be the submission. This report was actually presented, if you remember, sometime, I think, probably a year ago, last spring. The full report, I think, was emailed to you. It's 78 pages. We're not going to go over the entire thing today. I was only going to go ahead, or Jeff was only going to highlight some of the changes that took place from the prior presentation that we did over in the board conference room. So as I mentioned, there was a demographic study that was performed within the Central Texas area, utilization study to understand the various departmental needs across campus. We did a student survey, and then we had done some site surveys that were complete as well. And with that, we had assigned some estimated budget dollars for those projects. So some of the major takeaways where we needed some additional science lab. This was in the science building, building 150. We had some aging vocational labs. We need a location for students during the renovations. So we've created some temporary spaces for that. Library, looking at the utilization of the library, working on some of the deferred maintenance needs. We've got a number of administrative offices that are spread throughout campus. We've got some aging parking lots, and then some other parking lot needs and roadways that you guys have begun to approve with some of those improvements over the past year or two. So we've looked at the science lab renovations, renovation of the Cade Center. It would require some portable buildings for a period of time, especially when we get into the lab and the Cade Center locations. We did create an annual budget for these over the course of the next 10 years. Would include the renovation of some student services enrollment centers, which are on the west part of campus, the buildings 111 and 119, as well as some other campus infrastructure work, which really becomes just an ongoing piece of what we're going to need to do. So I think you have been given in the handouts just the estimated budget. One of the things that we were really trying to focus on was to keep our fiscal spend no more than $5 million annually. I certainly realize we've spent a significant amount of dollars within the past couple years on the infrastructure project. And so we looked at how could we stagger and phase our annual spend to make it a little bit more accommodating so that we could certainly go ahead and provide for those resources through our, if we can, through the operating budget, even though it's capital dollars, those monies that we were able to save would help support these projects. So the grand total over the course of the 10 years was estimated to be just a little over $45 million, which includes some design fees, furniture. Of course, when you're projecting out 10 years into the future, anything can happen. COVID or other things can certainly put pressure on the pricing. Prices can fluctuate. A number of you may recall when the nursing building was built. I think the nursing building came in significantly under what the estimated budget was, which certainly helped out the college. So bottom line was there were no new buildings. We were looking at reinvesting in existing structures. No bonds would be required to go ahead and move forward with this. We're looking at around $45 million over the course of the next 10 years. Any of these projects can be moved forward, could be delayed if we needed to. Like I said, the project, the facilities master plan was essentially what we presented about a year ago. The main difference was everything was pushed out at least a year. So none of these projects would end up starting until the next fiscal year, which would be 21-22. So come on up. This is Jeff Chapman, principal with PDK. So we were kind of proceeding. I went through the slides real quickly. Do you want? Is there anything that you want to at least mention to the board? Just and kind of summarize.
Absolutely.
I mean, you help support us quite a bit through the project. So go ahead.
Thank you for having me. Sorry I'm late. Weather's been terrible since I don't even know when White Knuckle a long time today. So this is the culmination of a long process. that Mark and I have been with working with your school. And when we started the process, we had a lot of big dreams, but they oftentimes, as is the case, met with some economic realities. And so the goal of the plan was to improve the campus over the next 10 years, but no new buildings, no bonds, but evaluate the major needs of the campus to keep the school moving forward in a positive direction, so that when kids are coming to your campus from the new clean schools or the surrounding areas, they feel like they're actually going to a college campus. And so we feel like we've devoted most of the resources over the next 10 years to doing exactly that, making the enrollment process much simpler and smoother, the vocational labs, improving those, and both sections of the Kate and the Sid Weiser building, making sure that the library feels like a collegiate library, and several other projects throughout the campus to make it feel like that Central Texas College is continuing to move forward in the new century.
So with that, we're more than happy to answer any questions that you guys may have or review. We do have the full plan if you guys want to get into specifics of that. We can certainly go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we'll just open it up to questions.
Questions?
The date projections, Mark, are those based on the need at that time, at this time, or at future times, or is there any, I'm sure there's some rhyme or reason why you selected some of those earlier than others?
Yeah, there's actually need in, even though we have some of the projects that are spread out over 7, 8, 9 years, some of those needs are actually real today, but we prioritize based upon where we felt we had some pinch points in regards to students. So that was the focus, the initial focus around the labs, which was then followed by the Kate Center buildings 101 and 118. Those were specifically student spaces that had some needs. We certainly didn't want students leaving CTC to go to another institution because they felt like they couldn't get access to those critical labs that I think and I'm not on the academic side, but certainly are required as a part of the curriculum and their degree plan.
That's exactly right, Mark. And so we spread it out over time to ensure that your spend per year is a maintainable average. And then we made sure we prioritize students first and administration second. So you'll notice all of the student-based projects are in the front part of the master plan. And then when we get to your administration, that is the latter part of the master plan.
Question?
Where are we on married student housing?
So married student housing, the direction of that hasn't changed from where we did it before. The recommendation was that we would keep the 4 buildings on the north end of married student housing, and the rest of them would be demoed. So that was as a part of the plan, but then COVID hit, everything ended up getting delayed. We pushed out the plan, and so we just left the buildings as they are. But the plan has it that we would maintain 4 of them, the rest would be demoed, and that would actually take place starting this next fiscal year.
And we tried to identify critical programs that could use spaces of that shape and size to help with other aspects of the master plan. So for example, the police would go into one of those buildings, and that would allow us to renovate where the police is currently located.
Yeah, there are certainly some, when we start looking at some of the, while we put a lot of the staff and non-academic improvements toward the latter part of the plan, that doesn't, I don't want to minimize the significance of where they're at and what we can do to continue to improve the experience for the student. So anything that we can do to improve the registration process, create additional space so that we don't have the pinch points, especially in our current environment, I think we want to do. One of the first things you have to do is remove the police department as well as the records department from that space. It's in the small building just behind it, in order to free it up so we can go ahead and look at some other type of use of the space that would benefit students as well as faculty and staff as well.
Another question?
The student services renovation, what's the status? I mean, I noticed that it's pushed out quite a bit. What renovations, or is it what's in the process now already? I'm looking at the elevator and and those kind of things.
So one thing is the elevators was kind of a key discussion that we had at one point. We need to get it into, which is now the enrollment center, building 119. Certainly we still feel like there are some ADA challenges, some other issues, especially with staff in the dorm still does not have an elevator. So when all of this hit, we basically went ahead and delayed it. But that, I think, is one of the things that we were looking at. As far as I know, we were continuing to move. We were going to continue to move forward with some of those immediate needs. And then as we get later on into the 10-year time horizon, we would have some additional, more cosmetic, do we need to set up the space differently to accommodate better the way that the departments are operating, the way that they're seeing students, et cetera. So there is, we do have the Morton Hall elevator as well as the building 119 elevator and the enrollment center. Both of those are projected for next year, but those would basically be initially done, and then the full building renovations would be further down the road.
And we were considering those more student access projects rather than administrative projects because they're critical need for your students as well.
So the enrollment center renovation, is that part of what's already been done or is being done currently, or no?
Well, we currently don't have a renovation project in there. The one project that we had discussed was, and I'm incorporating, there's an adjacent building where the police department and the records is directly inside. Building 119 is a U-shape, and there's a building directly in it. So we had conversation with going ahead and relocating both of them over to married student housing, which would allow us to go ahead and do some temporary things regarding registration whenever students come in, maybe academic advising, anything to assist the student enrollment process. That would be done initially, as Jeff had said, anything that would focus directly around the student. The broader building improvements, renovations would, besides the elevator as well, would take place further down the road.
Because some of these families, not just the student, but the families have not had an opportunity to visit our campus. So you only get one opportunity to make a first impression. So when they come to the enrollment center, that could be a make or break, just the environment, how crazy it is, finding your way, getting questions answered, all those things.
Well, one of the things that we had included in here, of the 4 buildings, if you've got an area for the police department, you have an area for records, you've got an area for, maybe we do something with a couple other areas, but we had talked about one of the buildings possibly being a welcome center, something that would be a central point where, students arriving, parents arriving on campus could learn a little bit more about the college. We're still working through some of the details, so with the plan, a lot of it was probably more conceptual, but that was the idea of how do we minimize the confusion when students get on campus. One of the things that we're moving forward with that we weren't necessarily waiting as a part of the master plan was doing some building renumbering. So that will actually take place sometime later this spring in preparation for summer and the fall semester. It becomes extremely confusing for brand new students who are on campus to understand, and unfortunately they don't always look at the name of the building. They like to refer to them by number. And when you have one building over here that's 101, yet the next building way over here is 111, they get lost. And so we thought being able to streamline that process to where when students come on campus, they could quickly find the building would be helpful. So we're moving ahead with things that we can until some of the additional improvements take place.
I'm confused by the numbers too, but I've been here a long time.
campus or anything, but part of the reason of choosing our campus is that it's small enough where people shouldn't have to run into a lot of confusion. They shouldn't have to experience that. It should be easy for them because we're centrally located. So I applaud you for always looking ahead, thinking about the numbering, those kind of things. I know that putting the signs out front have been extremely helpful. I've heard some other people talking about just knowing that, that they're at the right location. So thank you for what you do.
And the names on the buildings,
Yeah.
I think that's really helped and improved. And again, the great idea that he had on a welcome center. I mean, that is really, I think, a neat idea, and it's well, could be well used. It keeps people from getting confused as to where they're going. So, again, hats off to you and your folks and Jeff for suggesting that welcome center. I think that's great.
And so just as a reminder, when you approve this list of projects today, you're just approving the concept that this is the direction that the college would like to move forward with. For each one of these projects, Mark will bring you back a recommendation for a design firm, whether it's a parking lot, it might be a civil engineer, if it's a new welcome center, maybe an interior designer. Then they will work with a contractor to bring you a budget, and so you will have additional approvals for all of these projects during the 10 years. So it's not like today you're saying, go Mark, all right, we'll see you in 10 years, let us know how it goes. This is a very regimented process that continues after today to give you the guys the oversight that you need to manage the entire master plan.
And this will certainly, I think everybody's familiar with, when it comes to budget, we put together and provide, from our perspective to Bob and Dr. Carter, the capital budget. So we would basically be utilizing this as our guide to that capital budget that ends up getting presented and approved by the board. So you will see each of these numbers not only on an annual basis, but as Jeff said, as we're ready to proceed with a particular project, we'll bring that to the board for approval.
I noticed in the flow charts that you've got some temporary classrooms recommended implemented here. They're expensive and they're ugly. Where would you envision these going as far as the campus structure goes? Where we're going to set them up?
So we had talked about two locations. I think we probably had a preferred location that was just over here in the grassy area between the campus center and Eagle Hall. It sits down a little bit. We have access to power a little bit more readily. We could do some things. You've got a lot of greenery. We could do some things with some landscaping, temporary landscaping to try to improve it. We did talk about possibly putting it over in parking lot G, which is where the truck driving school was, but they're going to stick out like a sore thumb in that particular location. Be a little bit further away for students that may be, in the traveling through the main parts of campus, getting from class to class. But that was the goal, was to say where could we potentially put them, where it minimizes expense to the college because we already have some utilities. Make it accessible, do some things that will try to help improve the overall look at it, because I certainly agree portable buildings are not the nicest thing to look at. And the other thing too is that the spaces are used quite a bit by Early College High School, so having it in close proximity to where the students may be, and Eagle Hall and the Shoemaker Center is a bit of an advantage as well. So that was our initial thought.
Okay, that answered my question. The next question I've got, I'm sure you run this past Dr. Carter's people, and I'm sure Bob Liberty has already looked at the numbers. Have you thought of anything about front loading this with our reserve cash, so that the most important things that we're trying to accomplish get done first, and then as we trail off down to the end of the 10 years, they have less expenditure?
We have looked at various options. Certainly that can be one. I think the overall goal that we were, the approach that we were taking was to try to spread the dollars out knowing that we may run into similar years like we've had today. Who knows how long, COVID would potentially last. I think we were being extremely sensitive to the tens of millions of dollars that we spent on the other infrastructure project. There was a lot of conversation, I think, that had taken place as to do we want to go ahead and issue some type of bonds. I think there was, at least the way that I had taken it was that that was something that was not necessarily preferred, but certainly we can continue to have conversations with Dr. Carter and Bob Liberty around, does that make sense from a financial perspective to look at moving some of those projects earlier in our plan.
So to your point,
Look at that, you got a chance.
the most expensive projects are toward the front of the master plan. The Kate renovation and the Sid Weiser renovation are projected to be the most expensive projects in the master plan because of the high intensity nature of those buildings in terms of the labs and the classrooms that we will be renovating. And so how those projects slide along the x-axis in terms of the time frame, if you feel like for example, right now there are good market conditions in terms of bidding. The COVID pandemic has depressed a lot of commercial and industrial infrastructure projects, and so those people that have money that are able to move forward with construction projects are seeing very good values on bid day. And so that's an example of a reason you may want to shift projects forward in terms of that X horizon. And it's very easy to do. This master plan, we looked at kind of having, not wanting to stretch any one annual budget too far, but working with your finance department, if there are other reasons to do different things, it can easily be done along with this master plan.
I understand, I'm just asking if we think about the big picture, because right now we're getting pretty good return. And
I
the
think it's a great
future
point.
says we've got 15,000 plus of additional projects that are not gonna be addressed at all in 10 years. So
Yeah,
I wonder if there's a possibility that we could consolidate some of this and push it up. And since we've got some reserve cash right now, but we may not have it in 10 years.
Yeah, I think there's certainly some of that flexibility built into the plan that we could go ahead and move it up. I think one of the things that becomes a little bit of a challenge that we would need to work around is space. If we take down too many academic buildings at one time, we have nowhere literally to put the students as we're going through and looking at remodeling some of those spaces, which might lead to space off campus or some other temporary buildings. So I think we just kind of would have to work with the leadership team and kind of talk about what would that potentially look like, because I think it's going to be more than just a financial impact. There's going to be other student and academic impacts that would need to be worked through as well.
I understand. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Chapman, for coming. I'm sorry we had to get the rain delay, but we appreciate you coming all the time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your time.
Next item is the order for the election. Ms. Hagan.
The college is scheduled to have an election this year, May the 1st. There are 2 places up for re-election. The filing period started last Wednesday, and it runs through February the 12th. And this order is a requirement that needs board approval, and we post it on the website, and it details the dates, the times, the precincts for early voting and election day as well. And we'll also put this on the website when it is approved next week, which is a requirement.
And that election wasn't around May the 4th or something?
May the 1st, Saturday, May the 1st, with 2 places up.
Any questions, Ms. Hagan?
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is recommendation of any topics for upcoming agenda items or announcements. Let's start with whoever wants to go first. Charles?
Pass.
I don't have anything, sir.
Okay. Announcement, the board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 26, 2021, and the board workshop for Tuesday, February 16, 2021. have no, executive session today. And, we have any further mission or anything else to discuss? If not, then we are adjourned.